Mansfield today on a Thursday, and that's time to go traveling. And we're joined in the Mansfield Today studio today by an old friend of mine who, geez, we go back a few years.
Yes, don't you just?
Yeah. Sean Mccarthy, who is the CEO of Whitestar Travel, or Whitestar Cruises, I beg your pardon. I go back to the days where your mother was running Whitestar.
Yeah, Jeremy, that's a few years ago.
That's how long ago it was. And you were off gallivanting, taking tours, skiing tours to, was it Austria?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Solberg in Austria.
That's right. Yeah, jeepers.
So,
now look what's happened to him. From a drunken on the ski slopes to the CEO of Whitestar Cruises.
Exactly, looking after people cruising, and yeah, totally different. But I must say, very, very rewarding, because cruising is really a passion of mine.
Yeah. Now, Sean, the whole system has been turned on its head as a result of COVID. You guys represent some of the top liners in the world. Let's just firstly go through your portfolio that Whitestar represents.
Yeah, so Jeremy, we're lucky. We've looked after the Cunard sort of agency, if I can put it, for, I think, but with my mom, it's been over 30 years now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's really the cream of the cream, if I can put it that way. I think you've been on Queen Mary too.
Yes.
So she's the flagship, and you've got Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth, and soon to have a fourth ship launched early next year. So we're very, very excited about that.
Okay.
In the same stable is the P&O fleet, which also runs out of Carnival UK. And the P&O is probably a more sort of fun-orientated, very British-orientated cruise line, doing the Caribbean, doing the Mediterranean, the Eastern Med, the Western Med, and a number of other itineraries. So quite a different product. Then we do the Yachts of Seabourn, which is a 5-star plus product. I mean, it's just unbelievable. That's like a country club at sea, all inclusive. You get on board. It's all balcony cabins. It really is. It's a supreme product. And funny enough, it's done very well out of the South African market, because it does great itineraries, and a lot of the cruise ships now are doing sort of expedition cruising. So Seabourn do Alaska, they do Antarctica, those kind of things, which is popular. And one of their new ships, just to give you an idea, I mean, one of the excursions that they do is an underwater submarine where you can actually take a trip under the ice pack in Antarctica. So, you know, something very, very different, but an incredible product. New to us also is the Hurtigruten brand, which is also expedition cruising, Norwegian company that does the fjords. They've got a fantastic program in 2023 or 2022, should I say? Sorry, doing Dover to Dover cruises. So 7 or 14 night cruises out of Dover, doing the Midnight Sun, as I say, the fjords, and that type of thing. And then last year, or the year before, we picked up a product called Celestial Cruises, which is a Greek company. It's got 2 ships, and it's all-inclusive party cruises specifically around the Greek Isles. So a lot of fun, and a good way, if you're interested in that part of the Mediterranean, a good way to have a look and see, and then to go back, to be able to go back and see which islands you want to spend more time on.
Yeah, I suppose you've got to be very careful in how you put your package together. When I say your package, who you're going to represent, because different people want to go cruising for different reasons. You may get a younger crowd who want to go on a party boat around the Greek Isles or something.
Yeah, 100%. You're so right, and I think you know, when people choose cruising as a holiday, as much as it's important to choose which ship you cruise on, because I mean, a Seabourn ship, for example, is very, very different. Only takes 650 passengers, which would be very different to Celestial, which takes 1,200 passengers, to the Queen Mary, for example, which takes 3,000 passengers. So, and the amenities on board are different, whether you want all-inclusive, whether you want the fun. You also will find that on certain cruises, like a world cruise, you'll have a little bit of an older clientele, because those are the people that have got the time to be able to do a 110-day cruise around the world. Whereas your 7-night cruises or your 14-night cruises, you'll tend to have a younger market, because those are the guys that can, you know, that's all the leave that they can get.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly. I mean, I think nowadays, destination is important, where you want to cruise, the ship that you want to cruise on, and the ease of being able to get to where you want to go on a cruise holiday.
Are you still having problems with certain destinations and having to cut out cruises in those particular areas?
Yeah, so Jeremy, I think COVID has obviously played a big part in that, and certainly in cruising coming back. I was actually on a call yesterday, and the guys the general feeling is that by May next year, cruising will be running between 80 and 100% occupancy again, and the ships running. But unfortunately, there are areas in the world, like for example Italy, where South Africans can't travel to at this stage. Japan, they're quite tricky with regard to who can cruise. And then there are obviously cruise lines that have got their rules and regulations around the vaccines. Have you been double vaxxed, that type of thing. So that will influence where you can cruise and what have you. So you've got to be careful that for that very reason, cruise companies also have had to limit sometimes the nationality of passenger that they can take, because you can imagine it's quite difficult if you've got 20 South Africans on board a ship that goes to Italy and suddenly those passengers can't get off in Italy because of their COVID regulations, if I can put it that way.
How have you had to adjust what happens on board as a result of this pandemic, and what sort of things are still ongoing? And I asked the question because as you were mentioning who you represent, I've sailed with Cunard, I've sailed with Hurtigruten, I've sailed with Seabourn, and let's take a Seabourn ship we went to the Antarctic with Seabourn. As you said, very limited amount of people. It's not a cheap trip to do at all. Yep. So you tend to find an older group of people there with maybe more comorbidities and all the rest of it. How has it changed life on board ships?
Yeah, Jeremy, I think people are obviously a lot more conscious of COVID and what happens. I mean, I think cruise ships got a bit of a bad rap initially when COVID broke. The feeling was that you had these vessels moving the disease around. But ships generally have worked around diseases, if I can use that word, for a long time. I mean, you will know 10 years ago, if you were on Queen Mary 2, you had to sanitize your hands before you went into the restaurant, and there was somebody else when you finished in one of the public toilets, that kind of thing. So, obviously that they're quite stringent about. Certain cruise lines are adamant with regard to vaccines. Wearing of masks in the public areas. Most of them are sticking to that. But I think it's just about being a lot more conscious. Cunard, for example, to give you an idea, they have an isolation area. So if somebody does get COVID now, it's not a case of shutting up shop and stopping the cruise. It's a case of taking that person, putting them into an isolated area that they've got, or isolated cabins, isolation cabins, should I say, and then dealing with it from there. So, I think it's now, from a cruising point of view, we're more and more seeing it a case of learning to cope and live with COVID and understanding that it is going to happen. And what happens now is the cruise ships, they are having passengers that are getting COVID, that are picking it up ashore, but it's how they manage that process as opposed to panicking and reacting in a negative way.
Yeah, I think we've all learnt a lot of lessons from this pandemic, unfortunately, but lessons which hopefully will be taken forward and acted on.
Yeah, I think as a whole, I think not just cruising, I think from a traveling point of view,
absolutely.
People have learned not to take things for granted. Certainly, I think the environment will benefit because people are probably not, certainly people are not flying as much. You don't have to go to Europe to go and have a meeting anymore. You can do it on a Zoom. So carbon emissions are something that will not never fall away, but I mean, if you take Cunard, for example, their plan is to have a carbon emission free fleet by 2050. Whether they can do that or not, it's created a situation where people are a lot more conscious, and the cruise companies are more conscious, so they're going to there's going to be a drive to see obviously not to cruise as far as fast with as many stops, because that is going to become a definite issue or topic that they're trying to sort out.
Yeah. Sean, thank you very much. The thing that I enjoyed hearing you say the most was that it looks like the industry is going to be back into the sort of 80s and 90% in the early part of next year, which is good news, not only for the cruise companies, but for their employees and also for the traveling public who are now so gutful of just staying at home. They just want to get out there and do something.
Yeah, Jeremy, you're so right. I think people want to travel. We're seeing it. People are booking now longer trips, whether it be cruising, whether it be to Mauritius. People maybe was turning around and saying, well, you know what, instead of traveling overseas twice or traveling twice in a year, we'll travel once and it'll be a longer trip and we'll spend a little bit more. So yeah, I think there's been a lot about inbound tourism and how we work in South Africa, and I think SA Tourism have done a good job there. But there's a big contingent of people that work in the outbound tourism market. So it is exciting, and we're excited about the world traveling again, and South Africans being able to travel overseas.
Sean McCarthy is the CEO of Whitestar Cruises. Thank you, Sean, for joining us in the studio.
Thank you, Jeremy. Awesome
nice
to be here.
to talk to you. That's it from us for today. Tomorrow we Into Your Car. Segi Mudley joins us for the vehicle show, or the motoring show, should I say. Until then, have a good day. Bye-bye.